So what are we going to talk about? At first, I want to give you information about oxytocin and its neurobiology, which are generally accepted. I want to introduce what's new in this topic and which actual results concerning psychological effects and oxytocin in the field of attachment have been generated. And therefore, I tried to summarize some brand new studies from 2011 till today. So it's going to be interesting, hopefully. We will proceed with a summary of the main results concerning oxytocin and bonding. And in the end, I will refer to similarities and differences between bonding and attachment and report some thoughts and ideas of Tony Stauss. I want to start with a short introduction of myself. Just a few words. My name is Alexander Müller, I'm 36 years old and I'm a psychologist. And I also started an education in psychodynamic and psychotherapy as I want to become an aggravated therapist. My first contact with bonding happened during an internship in Bad Herrenalben, it was 2006. And I became very curious, I have to say, and I started to take research on this field, and it still makes me curious. And the more important factor I want to mention is that it changed me. It changed me personally, and it still does. It's a very touching and a very deeply process, and it's incredibly exciting, and that's why I'm so fond of it. And I think all of you are. You wouldn't be here if it weren't so.
Alexander, who are these?
These two girls, my former roommates. This is my best friend, this is Valerie, and this is Nadia. She lives in Paris and she's still in Gießen. And you may recognize the suit. Okay. Oxytocin is considered to be involved in plenty of physiological processes like delivery, like lactation, but also behavioral patterns like sexual functioning, social memory, mood regulation, stress reactivity in social situations, and most of all, attachment processes like parenting behavior. It is very old from an evolutionary perspective, and it can be unchanged, found almost in all kinds of mammals. It consists of 9 amino acids, differing only in 2 of them from vasopressin. And vasopressin is built in the same course, has almost the same chemical structure, but distinct, maybe opposing functions compared with oxytocin. It's playing a role in homeostatic processes like the regulation of fluid, like the regulation of body temperature and functioning of the cardiovascular and autonomic nervous system. Oxytocin is a neuropeptide in the blood and in the brain. It's generated in the hypothalamus in 2 main nuclei. And what I found out, and is also well confirmed by other studies, is that oxytocin levels tend to be stable over time. We have a growing evidence for its relevance in psychological processes. And the latest state of science in human is this. There are 2 main causes. A big paraventricular nucleus, which sends oxytocin to the pituitary gland, where it is released into the bloodstream. And there's a small supraoptic nucleus, which sends oxytocin directly to the brain. And it's important to mention that oxytocin concentrations resulting from peripheral measurements in the blood or in the urine may not necessarily reflect brain concentrations. They could be estimated in the cerebrospinal fluid, but it's an incredible hurtful process to pull fluid out from the spine. And some studies find correlations in humans, but not many humans will say yes to such a hurtful process like that. So only a few studies can be found. And while some studies find correlations, others don't. And the discussion cannot be considered as completed or clarified because still no research is done. We have projections from paraventricular oxytocinergic neurons in different areas of the brain, like the bulbus olfactorius, like the frontal cortex, or like the amygdala. For the bulbus olfactorius, it's important to mention that smell plays a very big role in attachment processes. We have brain systems that are especially equipped with oxytocin receptors, like the amygdala and the limbic system. And both are associated with emotion in general, and the amygdala especially associated with the emotion fear. The increase or reduction is governed by the brain, by estrogen and many other neurotransmitters. And interactions with dopamine, which is associated with the reward system, are considered. And this makes sense because the interaction with the offspring, the interaction with the newborn, should be considered as pleasant for the mother. And the more pleasant, the more rewarding for the mother a behavior is she displays towards the newborn, the more likely the behavior will happen. But it's increased through many other neurotransmitters, as well as sensory stimulation during suckling. We have warmth of the body, we have touch, and considering warmth of the body and touch, here we have special connections with bonding. There are many psychological effects of oxytocin in attachment processes, and I will only refer to human studies. Oxytocin has effects on the distribution of warmth in the body of the mother. And this is an interesting interaction which I love to report because it's kind of natural. And it shows very interesting interactions between physiological processes on the one hand and psychological processes on the other hand. Oxytocin tends to enlarge the blood vessels and the chest of the mother. And after birth, the newborn is often placed in this area. And so she can warm the baby, because if the blood vessels are enlarged, more blood is able to circulate in this area. And maybe these experiences are the first bonding or attachment experiences a newborn makes in the real world. We have strong negative correlation of aggression with values of oxytocin and high positive ones with calmness and interest in social interaction. We have the reduction of anxiety in stressful situations, and an augmentation of trust in social situations. Experiences of social deprivation in Russian orphans during the first month of life result in lower oxytocin reactions. Attachment disorders and psychopathological development in general are associated with insufficient levels of oxytocin. And you can name depression, you can name anxiety, you can name affective disorders, you can name autism, and so on. And mother and infant are examined together. They are not looked at separated. We have endocrine reactions in the mother herself in comparison with the baby. We have maternal behavior and cognitions, which are examined. What is the mother thinking, and how does she behave in the interaction? And how do her thoughts influence her parenting behavior? Maternal sensitivity. And of course, attachment behavior in infants. Which behaviors do newborns display? Maternal mind-mindedness is a new topic. The baby is considered to be an individual with an own mind and with a capacity of intentional behavior. Oxytocin's impact on psychotherapy. If oxytocin influences attachment, in how far can the systematic application of oxytocin influence psychopathological symptoms and maybe provide a basis to improve psychotherapy? And what considerations should be taken out from genetic studies? One thing is important to mention, that social bonds are hypothetical constructs, and they cannot be measured directly. You only can examine certain aspects from a whole range what makes out a social bond. At first, we will have a look at oxytocin and attachment. Oxytocin levels across pregnancy facilitates postnatal maternal behavior and the formation of an emotional bond between mother and infant in humans, and this is by acting to reduce anxiety and to ameliorate responses to external stress. And as I already mentioned, it could be examined from both sides, from the view of the mother and from the view of the newborn. Mothers who have a less anxious state of mind are more able to increase their focus on infant care. Maybe the mother is not distracted so easily, and she's emotionally present, which is associated with empathy, which is associated with interest, and which is associated with attention. Or in terms of attachment theory, responsibility, attunement, or sensitivity towards the newborn. They are able to regulate their own moods. Maybe the mother is able to cope with stress more effectively, or to suppress anger or anxiety. And this is crucial because she mirrors these emotions directly to the baby. And you can imagine of an example of, maybe you all know it. It's in the middle of the night, the mother had a hard day, and her baby's crying because the diaper is full. And she gets out of the bed and she starts to get angry because, you can't have a little nap of sleep, and she pulls out the baby and tears off the diaper. And the following thoughts, the baby cannot actually think, but he experiences, or she experiences, a certain kind of emotion. And maybe a baby gets to learn, my needs are not good. If I have a need, someone's angry. It's not bad if this experience is made several times, but if it is made again and again and again, if it's a repeated experience, then something is learned. There's a quite interesting study which I want to refer to, and it's from Lane Strathern and his colleagues, and he examined 51 mothers and babies. And he found out that they are more able to recognize and respond more effectively to nonverbal infant cues in the context of social learning of the reward system. No, that's not right. It's another study. Sorry. We will come to this later. Plasma oxytocin concentrations measured during early pregnancy and 1 month after delivery predict positive and adaptive maternal behaviors, such as affectionate touch, such as a motherese vocalization, and an increased mother-to-infant gaze. And mothers with increased oxytocin responses are more sensitive of moods, emotions, and physical sensations, and they are less compulsive, school-driven, and task-oriented when they take care of their baby. Now we'll come to Lane further. He found out that secure mothers compared to insecure dismothering mothers display higher oxytocin levels after interacting with their infant. And he had a free play interaction with the mother and a 7-month-old baby. And he measured oxytocin directly after this interaction, and he found out that the oxytocin concentration was higher after the interaction. And it was higher in securely attached mothers than in insecure dismissing mothers. He also put the mothers into the scanner, and he showed them pictures from their own baby or from a strange baby, with crying faces or smiling faces. And he found out that there was a certain activation in the brain, and this activation in the brain was correlated with the oxytocin response in the free play interaction, which was measured 4 months earlier. And certain brain regions are considered to be involved in oxytocinergic and dopamine-associated reward processing. Oxytocin in psychotherapy, a rather new field. Next, we will focus on the impact of oxytocin. Sensitivity of caregiving is crucial for healthy development. Poor or unstable care results lead in persisting difficulties in forming and maintaining social relationships. And these people have an increased vulnerability to depression, to anxiety disorders, to suffer from substance abuse, personality disorders, and adult physical health disorders. There's the potential role of intranasal oxytocin in the treatment of these disorders, such as maternal neglect, postpartum depression, and addiction, which are currently explored. I really would have liked to introduce you the results, but the study is still running. Injections of oxytocin into the blood have been found to reduce certain physical and psychological symptoms of autism. And the oxytocin administration attenuates stress reactivity in borderline personality disorders compared with placebo. They measured cortisol, and they had a lower oxytocin reaction when oxytocin was administered. The field is rather new, and I think it is rewarding, but it should be considered very cautiously from my point of view, as many factors contribute to therapeutic outcome. Oxytocin and genetics. There's a certain oxytocin receptor gene A, with a terrible name, which is associated with secure attachment in non-Caucasian infants. And the same oxytocin receptor gene predicts attachment anxiety in females and autism spectrum traits in males. Males with at least one copy of the A allele at this gene show more autism traits. It's the latest topic of research, but it should be also considered very cautiously, because it is still unknown how many genes humans actually own. The number is estimated between 20,000 and 22,000, and if one gene is altered, what does this mean? And if another gene is altered, what does this mean, and how maybe there's an interaction. The field is incredibly complex, the field is incredibly difficult, but I wanted you to have heard of it. Here's an overview from a study of Japan, and in the middle you can see the brain and the oxytocin production. And central oxytocin release is stimulated by multiple sensory signals. We have auditory signals, like the infant vocalization. We have visual stimuli, the eye contact. And we have olfactory and physical inputs. And many sensory, physiological, and behavioral functions are enhanced through the release of oxytocin. The individual cognition, for example, if a mother sees a baby, oxytocin is released, and the mother recognizes it's my baby. Negative responses, such as pain, such as stress and anxiety, are diminished, and they also labeled this as a kind of social buffering. They have higher tolerance for separation distress and immersive experiences. So what conclusions can be made out of this? Results in animal research suggest that biological factors contribute strongly to both the quality of maternal care, and the intergenerational transmission of the motivation and capacity to provide care to the offspring. And the infant's attachment system serves as a foundation for a future caregiving system. The oxytocin production as well as oxytocin receptivity seems to play a role. But oxytocin is only one of several neuroendocrine systems. You can name vasopressin, you can name dopamine, and you can name prolactin. And they're not as well examined as oxytocin, and the interactions are not well examined. The levels of oxytocin and the responsiveness of oxytocinergic system to emotional stimulation varies from one individual to another. And this is one thing my study also confirms. Now I would like to come to the summary of the results between attachment and oxytocin. And these results of my research have been reported on several European and international meetings. And as I don't want to bore you to death with things you already know, I just want to shortly summarize the main results. Here's the mean of 3 base value groups. My study took place in Maternal-infant, was a stationary incubator, and when the patients came, I measured oxytocin, and this is called base value. And I built 3 groups, people with low, people with middle, and people with high oxytocin. And insecure attachment seems to be associated with low levels of oxytocin, because patients who score high on the attachment scale, which you can see on the left, had a low level of oxytocin, while patients with high oxytocin levels score lower on this attachment scale. Now I come to the summary of the results between oxytocin and bonding. Bonding seems to lead to an increase of oxytocin release after the 7th, but not after the 1st bonding session. And bonding seems to influence the absolute responsiveness of the oxytocinergic system. Here with a table, and on the left side there's the difference from the 1st bonding session. I measured oxytocin before bonding and after bonding and calculated the difference. And then I compared these differences from the 1st measurement and the 2nd measurement. The 2nd measurement was about the 7th or the 8th bonding session. And as you can see, the responsiveness of oxytocin increases significantly from pre to post. There were several weeks between it. And what I can say is that the release is very stable. People who release low doses of oxytocin always release low doses. And people who release high doses of oxytocin always release high doses. But at the same time, the amount of release can be changed. And this could be seen, this could be interpreted as a kind of learning process or a kind of adaptation of a neurobiological system. But you can criticize many weak points in my study, so these results should also be considered very cautiously. In my last study, I examined the relations between oxytocin and psychopathologic symptoms, which were measured with the SL90R questionnaire. And the SL90R questionnaire has several dimensions of psychopathology, like somatization, like depression, like anxiety disorders, or interpersonal sensitivity. And the absolute responsiveness or the flexibility of the oxytocinergic system seems to be associated with a reduction of psychopathological symptoms. Here's the results of the ANOVA, a means of the difference value for 38 people. I again built 3 groups: people who fall, people who rise, or people who remain unchanged in their oxytocin level. And people who fall in their oxytocin level have a bigger reduction of their overall psychopathological symptoms as people who are not responsive for bonding psychotherapy. The relief of the symptom burden is on the left side, and the highest middle value is in the group of the people who fall in their oxytocin level. So if we put all the results together, it seems that the flexibility of the oxytocinergic system is more important than the fact if the oxytocin level rises or falls down. The relation is curvilinear. And if the system has the ability to move, it's a good predictor for therapeutically outcome or the efficiency of bonding. Otherwise, if the biological systems are immobile, if they are fixed or if they're not adaptable, then the symptoms won't change very much. And the person has only a little outcome, the person has only a little relief. And this is very well known in empirical science. One example is cortisol, and another one is the heart rate variability. People who are barely capable to adapt their heart rate, even if they're very afraid, tend to become more heart diseases. They tend to become more diabetes, they tend to become more asthma, depression, and they have even a higher mortality after a traumatic event. The last point of my lecture is the reference to similarities and differences between bonding and attachment. The terms are often used in one breath, but both have very specific meanings. Bonding occupies with physical closeness and emotional openness, and attachment theory examines the interactions, the disturbances of the interactions, and the related emotions. Both share the basis of physical closeness and touch. It's important to get in touch with each other. It's important to show empathy and sensitivity. It's important to show acceptance for the true feelings of a person. And these repeated experiences may result in the development of attachment, but it's not the same thing. The need for bonding is the need for physical closeness and emotional openness. The need for attachment is the need for a secure basis that provides well-being and security, comfort, in times of trouble and threatening. Through the satisfaction of bonding needs, no commitment or responsibility. And the satisfaction of attachment needs result in commitment. In bonding, you have responsibility for your bonding partner too, but it's a short-term relational responsibility. After bonding, both people go separate ways. Attachment has a character of reciprocal, long-term responsibility. Each one fulfills the needs of the other one. 4,000. The aim or the goal of bonding is emotional contact and emotional approach of a person. The aim of attachment is to form a long-term relation. Thank you for your attention.